Tristan is someone that I've really grown to appreciate from his just attack and make things happen, desire to just continue to learn and apply. And he has recently joined the Daylight Computer team, who Anjan, the founder, was recently on. And we talk a lot about these fundamental aspects of health that get overlooked a lot as they bring a solution to market. Tristan, good to see you again, my friend. I have been really excited about some of the things that you are working on and working with, and definitely want to knock that out of the park as we get into it. But tell us a little bit about your involvement with Daylight Computer, why that's a passion for you. And I remember when you told me that you were going to work with them and join the team, that you were so excited. So why are you excited, and why is Daylight something that we need to all be aware of?
Yeah. Well, great to see you again, man. It's always a pleasure having these conversations. And Daylight Computer is almost like an unbelievable dream come true situation, job, opportunity right now. I think, and apologies if you can hear this lawnmower in the back, but it's crazy when, you put yourself out there in the universe and, what kind of is meant to be happens. Because I've known now, I believe for like the last 2 years, that devices, technology, light, EMFs, like these things are deeply intertwined, and that actually our technology, our phones, our devices probably are the number one toxin in our environment, mostly because it's very under-addressed. We're on these devices like 24/7, and there's no alternative. They're so pervasive. They're so ubiquitous in society. We're spending an ever-increasing amount of time on our screens, on our devices, and there is no healthier alternative. There's a healthier alternative for food, for the clothes we wear. We can avoid, pesticides, herbicides, plastics, endocrine disruptors, PFAs, by lifestyle choices. And we're not really exposed to these things like oftentimes 24/7, 365, like we are with non-native electromagnetic inputs and kind of the toxic tech. So I knew it was possible to engineer better, healthier technology. I knew it was possible to fix a lot of these issues. I just didn't think anybody would have been working on this for years and would have had enough success and momentum to actually compete with big tech, because the barrier to entry is so high. I worked in electronics for 5 years in semiconductors. In order for anybody to care about you, you need to be shipping hundreds of thousands or millions of units. But then, I podcasted with Anjan, founder, CEO of Daylight, in early January. And he told me the story. And like halfway through our podcast, I immediately realized I needed to drop everything I was doing and jump on board, because background is electrical engineer, but in the product marketing management space in semiconductors, electronics, then, total nerd about EMFs and light. And that's what I talk about. And, he needed help with marketing and kind of to scale this up, and jumped on board full time and been doing that ever since. So now I'm head of marketing, and, we're taking on more every day. And it's just, what an opportunity, right? Like, what an opportunity to change the world for the better and make sure that this company succeeds. And we have these healthier alternatives that I was kind of saying are not really available to people right now in terms of tech devices, computers. And it's been a wild ride for the first, half year, and really excited to see where we can take this, and super thankful and grateful for people like yourself that are giving us a platform, because this really is a grassroots movement. If we really want to embark change and get the word spread, this is how, that happens. It's the only way it happens.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely a community that has popped up around more of questioning the paradigms and diving into what's actually going on, what's making us sick, why are we feeling the way we do, why is a mental health catastrophe in society. So I want to dive into a little bit more of the science and the negatives of tech. I think that's something really important to kind of paint, not necessarily for just the fear mongering, but I mean it's a massive deal. And so, like for me, I homeschool my kids. Honestly, the number one reason, there's a lot of reasons, but the number one reason is to get them out of that light environment. And I think that that's a hard connotation. I think it's been easier for me to sell the benefits of sunlight than it has been to relay the negatives of what's going on with. I mean, this light that's in my face right now, right? Like you're going outside because you understand it. I think that there's a lot of backstory there, but like this is really damaging, right? So can you go into that? Go into what are these negative effects, Tristan, of being on the phone, especially the kids, right? Like I see, it just breaks my heart because I don't know if the parents know exactly what's going on when they're just glued to those screens, and that's the babysitter. I think that we feel that it's harmless in society. So go into that a little bit on what is really going on when we have something blue plastered to our face.
Yeah, and I would say that selling the benefits of nature and sunshine is a good angle, right? Like that's what we're doing at Daylight. We're doing both, but always getting an angle of like hope and positivity is helpful because it can be easy to get really negative. But the truth is the truth, and the facts are the facts, and it's quite obvious that tech and these devices are toxic for our health, for our mental health, for our physical health, and for our children's development. And it's really problematic, especially for them, because they are more susceptible. They're more sensitive due to their smaller body sizes, their developing biology, and the fact that their brain is developing and it's trying to take in all these inputs to learn. And the environment that it's learning in is an artificial reality instead of the actual reality of outdoors and kind of human interaction, social interaction in person. So I think of it from a few reasons. And the first one is exemplifying kind of what you just said and the differences between you and I right now is that technology is almost always keeping us indoors, right? It's keeping us in this artificial world that is very new for humans. We're indoors under weird lighting, there's no fresh air, we're not connected to the earth, so we're not getting any of the benefits of being outside in sunlight, grounded, fresh air, all of these things. And we're leaving a lot of energy on the table, a lot of the right input signals by doing so. And if you want to talk about like EMFs as well, like indoors in highly concentrated areas, especially in offices or where there's a lot of people, all of those stressors are going to be magnified to another level. So that's one thing. It keeps us inside. Rough statistics saying we're spending like 85 to 90% of our time indoors. That's even a relatively old study. I bet you it's far higher now, like COVID, probably like 95%. So kids especially, what do they want to do when they're young? They want to go outside. They want to run around. They want to be barefoot. They want to get dirty. This is massively important. Kids, if we just instinctively let them do what they want to do, that is the best way for them to develop. Take their shirt off, get dirty, run around, like just play outside. That's what we want to have for our children. But instead, we're giving them iPads when they're 2, 3, 4 years old. We're getting them, one-to-one learning after that inside of these schools that are lit with fluorescent, panels, and they're not spending a lot of time outside. They're not getting playtime. They're not really connecting with nature. So that's a massive problem. And then the device itself. So that's like an indirect, negative aspect, right? The direct aspect is that the screen itself is very problematic. So it's very high in blue light, isolated artificial blue light that is pulsed or flickered because of the LEDs that are being used. And flickering and pulsing LEDs is a whole category of a stressor in and of itself that people don't really count as, carrying a lot of weight, or they just don't know about it at all. But these LEDs are changing in amplitude. It's an invisible stressor our brain is perceiving. And if you go right to like the IEEE Institute of Electronic and Electrical Engineers or any study, it'll list it right in front of you. Flickering LEDs cause eye strain, migraines, headaches. It aggravates autism symptoms. It can cause anxiety, photoepileptic, episodes, this is like not even debated. This is agreed upon. But for some reason, every single screen, every light bulb, like they're all using pulse width modulation control, and it's really bad. And if anyone suffered a concussion or has like a history of migraines from other reasons, you know that looking at your phone screen or a laptop screen or even a TV, it does not feel good. It brings back those symptoms. I mean, it did for me. That was the number one trigger for all of my post-concussive symptoms, staring at the phone. And I actually think that Flickr might be the bigger reason for that, at least directly. And then we have the light spectrum, right? So we have highly isolated blue light without the rest of the spectrum. We have a little bit of, the visible spectrum, but almost no red, definitely no infrared, and it's unbalanced. And blue light is high energy. It's very stimulating. It causes an increase in reactive oxygen species and mitochondrial dysfunction. In sunlight, we have a balance. We never get blue without red or infrared. And we have a balance between the high energy, highly stimulating, very important wavelengths of blue, violet, and UV, and then the healing, the more restorative, longer wavelengths that are lower energy and can penetrate deeper into our biology and improve mitochondrial function. That's red and infrared. So we've distorted the balance. And blue light also has a dopamine component to it as well. It's very stimulating to our reward, our reinforcement system. And that's why so many companies use the color blue. That's why when you walk into, a Las Vegas casino, you have all these bright flashing lights, because if it was a grayscale casino, you'd be a lot less likely to stay in there and pull the slots all day. It's the combination of both the lights with the high blue component to it, and then the content that's on the devices, the social media, the kids' YouTube videos, the clever songs and 30-second TikToks or 10-second TikToks. It's almost a two-headed monster. So I think these devices are designed to be addictive. It's big tech's business model to keep us on there for longer, because they are using that data and then they're feeding back the algorithm to keep us on there. They're getting money from ads. They're getting money from these sources that is all tied back to how long we're consuming content and spending on our devices. And that all ties back to kind of the money component as well. And I know, we've talked in the past a little bit about Bitcoin and fiat money. And if you look at what's propping up our entire economy, it's mostly tech companies. We're talking about trillions of dollars in this industry, a handful of companies running the entire, market. And why would they ever change? Why would they design technology that's more aligned with our biology, that's more neutral, and it's more of a tool instead of a portal into this artificial world? It's because that's not really in their best interest or incentive, and it's not in the best interest of our entire economy as well. It's this perpetual, unsustainable, unsatiable desire for growth that needs to happen to continue to beat inflation and the devaluing of our monetary system. But it's a vicious cycle, and I'm very concerned, especially for children, as mentioned. But that's kind of the high level that I see. And then there's the EMF component as well. That's another stressor. The radio frequencies from whether it's the cellular data or the Wi-Fi, and again, all those standards were set in 1996, the year I was born. So from the FCC, their guidelines haven't been updated since 1996 on radio frequencies. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the Children's Health Defense actually sued the FCC and won 2 to 3 years ago on this topic exactly. Nothing has happened or changed. And all of these standards, like the specific absorption rate, the radiation SAR readings for like iPhones and smartphones, they're all done. They're measured on a 6'2", 220-pound, adult male. So they're absolutely not taking into account the higher susceptibility and effect on smaller body sizes. So children are not being, considered as higher risk at all. And it's really unacceptable. But at the end of the day, there's no alternative. People are stuck in this convenient world, and we're kind of been made low dopamine because of all this, and it makes it even harder to change. But we're on a mission to uproot that kind of stickiness that big tech has in our mind.
Yeah. So Tristan, you kind of brought something to mind. Is arguably the currency of big tech is awareness, right? As our attention, right?
Yep.
And so what they have done is engineered a way of making us addicted to where they get more of our attention. Like in a nutshell. And what that's doing, you hit on dopamine a couple times, but can you go into that a little bit more and why I mean, honestly, I don't remember if it was Eric Novak or Tom Seeger recently said that it's actually the boomers that are arguably the most addicted to tech, whether that's Facebook and social media platforms. So, what is that dopamine connection here? Can you break that down into why dopamine's so important, why we're addicted to these phones, and what that low dopamine state is?
Yeah, that's a great one. And it's kind of, it's, it can be hard to explain or understand because people think that we just get like hits of dopamine and that's it. But, I actually like, Andrew Huberman does a good job talking about this. He's very well versed and he calls it actually a dopamine reinforcement system. So dopamine, is a neurotransmitter that is really, it's reinforcing like motivation to go do something and seek out certain behaviors. So as teenagers, we have much higher levels of dopamine to go out and seek and learn in the world. Same with children, and that's why they're far more susceptible. But in reality, the important thing to comment on and notice and realize here is that it's all relative to a certain baseline, right? So wherever your baseline for dopamine is, and then you do something fun and, it kind of goes up and then it comes back down. And that's the same thing with consuming content on social media. Like you kind of get this spike in neurochemistry and then it comes back down. The problem is that baseline, that threshold is always changing. It's always adjusting based on what you're doing every day. So if you're an adrenaline junkie and you're climbing crazy mountains and jumping off cliffs like every single day, you're going to get these massive highs, but then, your threshold is going to be way different than like an average person. So in order to get that delta again from your baseline, you're going to have to keep doing crazier and crazier stuff in order to feel that same difference from your baseline to the peak. So it's really the delta that matters. And what's happening when we're consuming, all this outrageous content, this unbelievable information. I mean, just think about what the average person can watch on social media, on the internet every single day. It's truly unbelievable, inconceivable for the brain. So that now becomes the norm, right? Like, so that delta keeps shrinking in terms of like, or it actually keeps growing in terms of what you need to achieve like a new peak, right? The first time you watch like a crazy video online, you're like, oh my God, that's like the most insane thing I've ever watched. But now you scroll on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube shorts and you see crazy stuff and you're just like, nah, well, that's cool. Okay. It's because even though that content might be the same, the response from your brain is completely different. And that's because this content and the way we interact with the internet, it's desensitizing our receptors. So the dopamine delta is not as high because it's not as sensitive because you're constantly consuming all this unbelievable, information and videos and content. So what effect does that have on our real life? Well, if you watch 20 unbelievable videos in an hour online and you go out into the real world, what's it going to look like? It's going to seem really boring. It's going to seem dull. It's not that exciting. You just watched, someone free dive off a mountaintop, or you watched, some guy get beheaded in some Middle Eastern video. And as a child, that can extremely alter your entire cognitive development so that you don't want to really interact with people in real life. You're kind of afraid, you're timid, it's boring, it's not exciting. So the entire social dynamic changes because of the content that we're consuming. And like I said before, the dopamine angle from the light is very interesting. There's not a ton of research, but there's a few papers. It's clear that blue light is more dopaminergic than like red light. And that's by design. Like blue light is extremely important for our biology. It's really the main input signal for our circadian health. It's the main Zeitgeber, which means that blue light is setting the clock in our head, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is the master clock for all of the subsequent, circadian clocks we have in each organ system. It's all running from there. And blue light is the main input signal to set that. So it's really important for our bodies to seek that out. Because I remember what I said, like dopamine is like this reward seeking behavior. And that is problematic because these screens, these devices, again, like the casino, they're using the light to draw us in, to prime us to then be more susceptible to the viral dopamine reinforcement reward system altering content. And it's scary. So when I say that people are like walking around low dopamine, it's really because their entire threshold and their delta has changed. So the whole perspective is altered, and then real life becomes really boring. So at daylight, what we keep saying is, we took the color out of the screen so you can have it in your real life. Because right now it's reversed. It's people's reality is their screen, is their device. And then they go out into the real world, and that's gray. And that's a problem. And that's why mental health issues are through the roof. They're skyrocketing. And when we have this, interaction at a very young age, that is just setting your entire cognitive development, your normal, your baselines up for failure for the rest of your life. And I've noticed this personally. Like if I go out camping or backpacking for like 3-4 days and I come back to my phone and social media, I notice it's sucking me in. Like I can feel that pull, like that gravity is way stronger. Whereas once I'm like on it 5 days in a row, it feels normal. It doesn't feel that kind of strong, but it's a problem. I mean, the claws really are coming out of the screen, and it's criminal.
Yeah, so I agree. I think we've all experienced that kind of doom scrolling, right? Where we've sat there, and before you know it, a whole bunch of time has gone by, and you're like, I can't believe it's been that long, right? And it's just complete waste of life, honestly. So with the kids specifically, this is the whole reason that I got a daylight computer was for my homeschool kids. Where can we maybe even hypothetically see these huge improvements in their lives, whether that's behavior, that's in health specifically. Like where are we going to be able to help our babies by using this daylight for we at our fingertips? There's so much information, right? There's so many resources. We're not getting away from it. That's why I love what y'all are doing. So what can we see beneficially for our kids when we are substituting a daylight for, say, another device?
Yeah. I mean, for starters, you get the benefits that technology brings without these side effects. And technology is incredible, right? Like we just talked about how you can watch all of these unbelievable videos and things, but more importantly, you have access to the world's information and knowledge. So why isn't everybody a genius? We should be. Everyone should be a genius. Everyone should know like almost all there is to know about the world, about everything. It's all there. But what happens? We get distracted and we watch, cartoons and cat videos and, crazy nature videos and, just TikToks. And we have 42 tabs open because we're constantly being pinged with emails and texts. We're constantly toggling between tasks. So we're learning. We have more information and knowledge available to us, but we've never been worse at learning. And that's a byproduct of the environment that we're learning in. So for kids in this next generation, what we're building at the Daylight Computer is, the hardware is non-invasive. So there's no stimulation. So you can just be focused on what you're consuming. I mean, what's nice about like an analog book is you're just in it, right? Like you're just there to read, maybe take notes on the side. And that's a much higher like resonance in terms of making an imprint on your brain and learning, as opposed to, just reading an article, scrolling through on the internet or something where there's 40 other things happening. So it's returning some of the analog components to learning in a digital setting. You can use it outside, so you get the benefits of nature. I mean, overall, like health, if you're healthier, you're going to have better cognition. You're going to be better at learning. You're going to have better energy. You're going to be more motivated to learn more things. And overall, it's all a positive feedback loop. So you can get the benefit of learning outside, education outside. And then the software ecosystem, operating system that we're building is also going to be centered around productivity and low distractions. So the notifications are off by default. There's going to be some core components that really just let you go into a topic and stay there and learn there. And it's easy to take notes and kind of, annotate on a PDF. All of the apps for learning are still available. So it's really just narrowing in a focus. So for children, getting back to the topic of the question is, we have this ability to use the benefits of technology without the negative side effects so that they can learn, but they can be more deliberate about learning, get less distracted. And if they do want to do it outside, they can, and they can get the benefits of that environment. And then they also they won't have as strong of a grasp and, an addiction to the device. Like I brought my daylight to the farmer's market last weekend and saw a friend who has like a 2-year-old son or 3-year-old. He's like, yeah, we never give them screens or anything, but regularly, but every 10 minutes, like once a week to just pass the time, like they'll watch something on my phone. Like Bluey is a popular cartoon. So we pulled that up on the daylight and he watched it for like 5-10 minutes on the sidewalk in the sun outside. And then when it was time to go, his dad was like, all right, it's time to go. Like, it's taken away. And kid was like mildly upset, but that was it. Whereas like if that was an iPad inside, most of those kids are going to throw a temper tantrum and it's going to ruin the whole day because it was that pervasive in terms of having a firm grasp on their brain and really like not wanting to let go. So it's minimally invasive. That's kind of the point we like to bring. And in a world where so many kids now are neurodivergent or have some sort of cognitive development issue from probably just the environment that we're raising kids in and also the health of parents, that's even more valuable. So ADHD and autism, for example, it's even more valuable because those kids are hypersensitive to their surroundings and prone to being distracted. So that's another core component. So we can really just return the best of what we could get out of all of the information that we have available, we think.
I love that. Yeah, I hope that this is just a massive tool that we embrace on those problem aspects of kids, right? Like we have what I guess would just be called an ADHD epidemic, whether it's overdiagnosed or underdiagnosed, or we're just not paying attention to the root cause, which I believe light is massive, and then followed by atrocious diets. That blows my mind. So, I keep going back to the schools and why I homeschool. I used to go and eat lunch with my two that were in elementary, and to see all the other kids what they're eating, it blows my mind. And so this was before I really grasped the light context, but it was it's Yoo-Hoos, it's chocolate milk, it's just packaged crap. And then we expect these babies to go sit in a classroom and pay attention and sit still and learn. It's like it's the most asinine way of thinking ever. And so what are your thoughts on the diet component in coupled with this technology? How would you rank those hierarchies? Because as you know, you and I both respect, probably revere Jack Cruz, and he really minimizes the nutrition piece, but I still think it's absolutely massive. So, what are your thoughts? How have you been able to rationalize those ideals?
Yeah, I mean, diet is always a major component to the story, but at a high level, it's returning to what's real, right? So eating real food, minimally processed is vitally important because, as you said, especially for children, glucose spikes and giving them highly processed seed oils and sugar, like they're gonna be up and down like a roller coaster, and then you try and put them into a classroom, and you know how on earth could you expect them to sit still and learn when already all they want to do as kids is run around outside and play? So yeah, I mean, nutrition is vitally important from all angles. It's aligning the input signals is what I always say, and attest that to being an engineer is you think of a system, and if you want it to function optimally, you have it to give it all the right inputs, right? You want high quality light. For me, that's the main input signal because that's the one that we're exposed to all the time. I should say electromagnetic inputs, and tying in, EMFs across the board there. And, food, of course it's extremely important. And when we misalign the food inputs, and if that's not connected to our local environment either, our body's going to get a little bit confused because all our body is trying to do, Logan, is gather inputs to optimize the system and adapt for the environment that you're in, right? Because that's how it knows where you are. That's how it knows, what hormone it needs to upregulate, what time of year it is. Is this optimal for reproduction or not? And if you're a kid, is this optimal for development and growth? Like, what sort of features do we need to build out? What sort of mental maps and cognitive circuits do we need to develop to survive and then thrive in this environment? And that's why, again, the decentralization component is massively important because depending where you are, that's going to look different. But the script is the same for everyone. Get outside, get the light, minimize the toxins, eat the real local food, and you're going to be set up for success because all you're doing is giving your body what it needs. You're not doing anything special. You're just like letting your body do what it's been designed to do for hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years for all biology. And it's only when we step away from these, what would have just been normal living, do we have all of these issues. So, I did another podcast this morning, and it's just like everyone gets so gung-ho about how these are all health benefits, but they're not. They're just they're just normal things, but we have removed ourselves from them. Like grounding shouldn't be a benefit. That's just like the standard. Like sunlight, red light therapy only works on sun deficient like people, and that's our whole society today, right? So it's an interesting frame, but across the board, and why we believe like reconnecting to reality and getting outdoors, which is the real world, is the most important message, and you can kind of apply that to all levels of your lifestyle.
I think you bring up a beautiful point in like what we should do is unbelievably simple. But what is going on is unbelievably complex as you dive into the science behind it, right? And I think that is kind of maybe the disconnect in our message as far as resonating to the general public, right? Because when I tell somebody that this is Tristan, these are my kind of guidelines. It's get in the sun as much as you can, watch the sunrise, be out in the sun, build melanin. So get a tan, see the sunrise. Like that's so simple, right? Like there's some little nuances there. The dietary guidance is eat seasonal, local, and natural. Like that's not hard. So and then avoid the technology and stuff or minimize it, especially at night. That's pretty much it. Like that is unbelievably simple. Now, why is where I feel like we lose a lot of people in the message, because for somebody like you and I, or Max, or anybody that's gone through and listened to like every cruise talk ever, it's like it's deep and complex, and there's things that I don't know that we're ever going to figure out, in all honesty. But what we can do to kind of maximize those things is pretty stinking simple. So one thing that I'd like to see if you can lay out foundationally is the magnetism piece. Is there a hyper easy way to understand this? Because I'll tell you what I did. Last night, I actually was listening to Richard Feynman lectures on magnetism, trying to wrap my mind around this. And so I didn't know if you have a way of really getting that piece a little easier than Dr. Feynman.
Yeah, well, first off, I agree with everything you said. I mean, and I think we, as kind of like these, people of the platform, communicators, educators, need to meet people where they are, because, something that when you get into this space, it's really easy to just start going super deep and, just telling people they need to do X, Y, and Z, and just harassing them with studies and blah, blah, blah. And that just doesn't work, right? And then we end up quabbling about, which diet or which lifestyle practice and who's right where. And I don't think it's very helpful, to be honest. And I'm glad that I'm more removed from social media now and focused on Daylight. And at Daylight, we have this opportunity to spread this message at a very high level. And right now, our message is simple. We are starting the outdoor computing club, and we want to return people to the real world. And that's all it is. And the more time you spend out in nature, and then, have technology that allows you to be productive while you're doing that, is going to allow you to become the best version of yourself. Full stop. That's it. We don't need to get into controversy. We don't need to get into the weeds. But yeah, the electromagnetic aspects of our biology is very fascinating, right? And I recently gave a talk at Max's conference in Australia on electromagnetism. And I think what's important for people to realize is that we, nature, this planet, are electromagnetic beings. Full summary, you need to understand that at the lowest level, we're taking in electrons, photons, protons, and photons are electromagnetic by definition. That's what's comprising electromagnetic waves. They have an electric field and a magnetic field component to it. The Earth, we wouldn't have life on this planet if it wasn't for the Earth's magnetic field, because it's shielding the Earth from this solar radiation, the harmful solar radiation, and it's filtering what's coming through. And the reason we have that magnetic field is because the Earth's molten iron core is moving, and moving charges is what generates a magnetic field. So a charged particle will generate an electric field, and a moving charge will generate a magnetic field. So how you can envision that is if you have your lamp plugged into your outlet, but not the light bulb turned on, you will just have an electric field generated. And once you turn on the light and there's current flowing, you will also have a magnetic field. So what folks like Cruz are always talking about is the importance of magnetism, because magnetism is at the core foundation of life on this planet. It's stronger at the poles because we have this kind of like bar magnet you can imagine on our planet due to that molten iron core. So the north and south magnetic poles just happen to be very close to the geographic poles as well. There's a long story with like pole reversals potentially being directly correlated to, extinction events as a species. And it makes sense because, again, that magnetic field is so important for how we're interacting with the rest of the solar system, and then how our biology is interacting as well. So most people don't realize, and what I kind of bring up are always like examples, like how are we electromagnetic beings? Well, what do we use to measure the activity in our brain, in our heart? Electrocardiogram, electroencephalogram. We use MRIs to find out injuries and tumors, torn muscles, right? That's magnetic resonance imaging. It's using a very strong magnetic field to align the protons and the water molecules in our body. And then we zap it with a radio frequency so that we can get a signal back and understand kind of what's going on in that tissue. Like, this is normal practice, right? Like, everyone knows about an MRI. But when we start talking about other electromagnetic inputs, foreign ones, potentially having an effect on our biology, that's when you lose the crowd, you lose the mainstream, you lose the science, even though these things are all very agreed upon. I mean, you can look, and it's been proven and measured, the magnetic field of the heart emanates like feet outwards. It's very weak, of course, because it's not, there's not like amps of current or moving charges or very strong electrical potential, but there is in, comparison to the rest of our biology, to like what's going on. And you can imagine how that is affecting the state of our health, who we're interacting with on a daily basis. And yeah, it's something that is complex because it's based in physics, and not many people are understanding physics. But I always like to say that we are electromagnetic beings. We actually have we have magnetic crystals in our brain that they have known about since the 90s, and this is what we think gives us this like sixth sense of direction, right? And I think Native Americans and other in kind of ancestral tribes that used to just navigate or traverse long distances, right? And a lot of other species like whales and birds are doing this constantly, and some animals have more of these crystals and more of a magnetic sense than the rest of us, but we're all tuned in to the Earth's natural magnetic field as a main input signal. And the brain waves correlating with the Schumann's resonance, it's all tied into the picture. So what is important for people to understand is that that's the core of like how our body's optimally functioning. It's always been that way. It's the reason the Earth, life on this planet exists. So when we have electromagnetic interference, which is the engineering term for multiple waves in a similar frequency, kind of causing some constructive or destructive interference, it's altering the signal, then our body is not going to be able to function optimally. You are lowering the signal to noise ratio, right? So if, oxygen needs to have a strong enough pull to be the final electron acceptor at the, end of the electron transport chain, and a magnetic field is being generated from the nanomotor, the ATP synthase, but it just so happens that there's some non-native electromagnetic interference. There's, deficient electron flow from a poor diet, or there's something affecting the water in the mitochondria. It's also interrupting the spin of the synthase. The magnetic field is going to be weaker. The oxygen might not be pulled as strongly to the end of the electron transport chain. We might have hypoxia. If we don't have sufficient grounding, we might not have as good blood flow. So that also might affect the oxygen getting, into the mitochondria as it needs to. So it's this like complex web, right? But for me, when those input signals are interfered with, they're distorted, the noise is higher, all that could ensue is that biological chaos or miscommunication is going to happen, and we're not going to be able to function as optimally. So it's just another knob in this very important feature set of input signals that we need. And yeah, I would like to dive a lot deeper, but I think that's kind of the key takeaways. And magnetism is really cool. It's really important. I would love to measure it in like, geothermally active areas like here in Wyoming. You can almost feel it sometimes, and that's where this meets the esoteric and the woo woo, but it is science, and right, you can measure this stuff. It's just you need some pretty expensive equipment to do so.
Which, all that to say, it goes back to what we said on the super simple: get in nature and minimize the technology. It's kind of the way to take care of the magnetism piece. So, Tristan, you and Ryan have a great podcast, Decentralized Radio, and y'all have, interviewed hundreds of experts across different disciplines and stuff. So, what's your favorite part of y'all doing the podcast? And are there any big like revelations that you've had with it?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun doing that. It's kind of on pause right now because I'm so busy with daylight, but I love podcasting. I think for me, all it was is like, it was a little bit selfish. Like, I just wanted to have conversations with these researchers and learn for myself. And that turned out to, be the best way to spread information, because I was just asking the questions that I wanted to know. Because
Yeah.
what my biggest revelation, Logan, is that there's not enough collaboration going on. There's not enough cross-functional discipline knowledge. Again, I am an electrical engineer. I'm not even like a real electrical engineer anymore. I went right into product marketing and the business side, but I know more about biology than 99.9% of electrical engineers. And I know more about electromagnetism and engineering than 99% of practitioners and kind of people who study biology. That's it. Like, I'm not like, and I've, kind of like bridged this gap, right? So when I ask, Gerald Pollack, have you been talking to Michael Levin, or have you seen like what Michael Crawford has researched on DHA, or, who else are you talking to in this space? And as transcendental as their work is, it's all siloed. And, the reason why someone like Jack Cruz has been so foundational for people is because he's one of the very few people who have connected the dots. So what I would like to see, and what I think is the biggest revelation and need in academia, is not only the obvious continuous funding of these low ROI, just like high humanity type research areas like water and grounding and getting outside, that have no end product or pharmaceutical benefit. So it's just money spending. Is cross collaboration. Because if we know what's going on in one facet, right, like it's all connected. So if you're studying mitochondria, you're studying water, you're studying, the piezoelectricity of bone, or something, DHA, like it's all connected. But if we don't collaborate and the experts don't talk with each other, then it's almost at a loss, because a lot of these guys are getting really old, and it worries me that their knowledge is going to be lost, and they really never had the chance to just sit down and brainstorm and like think about things. Because that's one thing I want people to know right now, is that we know so little about our biology, about health, about electromagnetism, about how the world works. I mean, quantum physics is that in a nutshell, but people always ask me my opinion on things and what's best, and is, grounding in a city is still beneficial, and grounding in your outlet, et cetera, et cetera. And I tell them, like, well, we don't really know, but I could give you like my logical explanation and, how I practice things and what makes sense to me. But if anyone gives you some definitive answer, then I would be extremely wary that that person is, kind of fluffing their feathers on they know more. Because the reality is we don't have that much information to kind of know concretely what's going on. But that's also what's so exciting about this. And the other revelation is that we're truly at the frontier of this knowledge, right? Who else can understand these things, or who else is discussing these things at a deep level, trying to push the boundary of what we know and how to best achieve optimal health? And yeah, the takeaways are simple, but I mean, it's fascinating to think about how it's different in each scenario, and like what pieces of the puzzle will be uncovered next. So yeah, that was a long-winded answer, but I think it's one of the best decisions I've ever made, having a podcast, the network you build, the information you can learn,
Absolutely.
public speaking, all of that. And yeah, that's why I love and appreciate coming on to chat with you as well.
Yeah. Your experience and your explanation right there is exactly the same as mine. It is the you can absolutely appreciate and love the work that somebody's done, but very few. And honestly, it's probably Jack is really the only one that these these cross disciplines that are deep, right? Like you go, it's something that I've referred to as the lattice work of mental models. When you get hyper siloed into something, none of this, you have blinders on, right? And that's what, not trying to talk bad about anybody that's been on, but there are blinders for everybody. There's huge, massive pieces of the picture that aren't there for various reasons. And so I think you're spot on. If we could have more collaboration, I think we have faster and more effective breakthroughs. And I think that's why, I appreciate you and Max and just coming together, because honestly, I feel like it's going to be our generation that takes on the torch and keeps going and makes the breakthroughs. But if we go back to what we were talking about earlier, how do we make it simple for people to apply to? We need to understand it, right? If you're going to be telling people they should do X, Y, Z, you need to understand why you're telling them that, not parroting some popular influencer's propaganda, right? So I revere this group. I appreciate the friendship, the work that everybody's doing. Anjan's been phenomenal. So the information, I think, is still as crucial as it ever been. And being at the frontier, the edge of that frontier, I think you're spot on there too. So the work matters so much. So where can we learn more about what you're doing with, and of course, Daylight and what's next?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I think what you said is very true. And yeah, I mean, it was cool. Like at the Regenerate second day, I think the average age of like the speakers was under 30. So we have this opportunity to be on the frontier. And yeah, I've always kind of thought that being well-rounded is very underrated. I think that's even more true in kind of like a fiat world, because you can't outsource anything nowadays. Like you need to be like sovereign over a lot of areas of your life, unfortunately. But yeah, it's never been a good time and a better time to be a jack of all trades, I think. So yeah, our mission at Daylight is ongoing. We launched end of May, really strong response, so exciting. And we're just getting started though. So a lot more education coming, social media. We're at Daylight Co. Our website's daylightcomputer.com. We're technically sold out for the year, but we do have $100 deposits people can place, and they would get priority access to the next release of inventory, which will be coming very soon. And yeah, we have plans to do a phone, a laptop, a lot. So we're, if we get this grassroots moving with a movement moving with enough momentum, then I really think we can have a major impact on the world. And yeah, my socials are at Tristan_health on Instagram, at Bitcoin and Beef on Twitter. But Daylight is what I'm solely focused on right now, and it's exciting. So I appreciate the opportunity as always, Logan. It's been a pleasure.
Always, my friend. No, thank you again.
Thank you for joining us in the Sowing Prosperity mission. If you like this content, like and subscribe, share with your friends. Be sure to check out sowingprosperity.com. Sign up for the email. We've got so much more work to do.